the show with me, Dan, and my guest, Nick Twigger. How you doing, Nick?
I'm not bad, man. Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
Yes, very good, thank you. It's been a while since our last podcast together.
It has. We came out of lockdown in that time.
Yes, yeah. It's been a off and on sort of time in between in terms of the politics of everything, which is obviously what we're going to be talking about today. The carrying on the political compass quiz, and all two listeners that listen to it.
I did notice. I was going through your YouTube channel, and I did notice on the political compass ones, there's less views than on all the other ones.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things. Like politics is something, especially at the moment. I think people are very picky about what they listen to. They don't want to be, if they think it's going to be too heavy or dragged down or anything like that. And some people just, I mean, my sister, for example, has never ever been into politics, and
I don't blame her.
Yeah, yeah, it's fair enough.
If anything, I'm on her side.
Yeah. You're enduring this rather than enjoying it.
Yeah, I mean, I've probably mentioned this before, but I don't vote, and I think just that whole political process is kind of moronic anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. But you still have interesting opinions, though.
I would call them opinions. I don't know if I'd call them interesting. Like, I swear, we had a question that was something to do with the economy, and it was like, unemployment, is it better to look after unemployment than something else? And we were just both looking at it like, what?
Yeah, I think it was better to control inflation than unemployment. Yeah, we were both like two monkeys discussing evolution or something. It was, yeah, we didn't have a clue what we were talking about. But I think what makes this enjoyable for me is that, you know, we don't have to know exactly what we're talking about. It's just I think the thing I like about this political compass quiz is it's just ideas, really, and apart from stuff like that, which is a little bit more technical, it's just sort of philosophies and the ways we live our life and how we sort of want to see that manifest in the wider world. I think that's sort of the basics of it, isn't it?
It's kind of like very, very high-level themes to human society.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess we could just jump straight back into it.
Ready when you are.
Yeah. So we're on the section that is titled "And How You See the Wider Society." So I don't know what page this is online.
4 of 6.
Is it 4? Okay, sweet. So we're on question number 42. So anyone who has listened to the other podcast, like the whole way through, apart from me and Nick, then thank you for making it this far. That's 41 questions worth of rambling that you sat through. So yes, thank you. If there is someone out there that does exist that listened to all the other podcast episodes that me and Nick have done, thank you. Heartfelt thank you. So yeah, let's carry on. So the question number 42 is: although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried. And just to recap on how this is done online and how we've been doing it, is there's 4 options. There's strongly disagree, agree, and strongly agree. So there's 4 options. There's no like not sure option or anything. So you have to have some sort of opinion. So yeah, how do you feel about that, Nick? It's sort of about the electronic age and surveillance, and yeah.
So, oh man, this is a tricky one because I see a lot of value in surveillance. Like, I'm not anti-CCTV by any means. I think it's great. You know, any crime happens, you've got that footage there ready and waiting. But a big problem that I see with this is, you know, the fact that your phone can track your every location, and man, like companies like Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, the social networks, I think they know much more about people than people really realize. And I think there is a level of surveillance going on with them. And I think I'm going to extend this to big data as well, because I think this test was probably made a while ago when CCTV was the more prominent surveillance concern, but now I really think it's about the amount of data and information we give to companies really like Facebook and Twitter,
Well, I
and then
guess
what they do with that. Oh, jump in.
I guess that is actually what it is now, surveillance. Because I guess most people, well, especially of our age, who not of a generation that has been around for a couple of decades. We always see surveillance. I think the thing you go to in your mind is like CCTV, like that camera sort of like moving in the corner of the room, but you're right, like surveillance now, it isn't really, it isn't just that, it is wider. It is about internet surveillance. I guess it is surveillance, isn't it, when people like Facebook and Google and all these companies know your data. They are they're keeping an eye on you in some ways.
Yeah, and I think especially, oh man, it's weird because there's a documentary on Netflix called The Social Dilemma. And in that documentary, like it's weird because there's a lot of like former like quite high executives who are part of like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, these kind of things, and they're all on this documentary like, yeah, these weren't good ideas, and they have way more information than you'd think, and then they actually go into cases. I'm not going to recite them now because I'll just fuck them up massively. But if you're interested in this kind of stuff, really do watch that documentary. But this data can be manipulated to actually have quite prominent effects on society. I mean, whilst I'm pretty neutral on Brexit nowadays, I do believe that there is evidence now. Well, not evidence, but I think it's pretty justified to make the claim that Cambridge Analytica and a group of other people involved with them did use big data, people's big data information in order to change the sway and manipulate it online. So, man, I would really... It's annoying because I do see benefit in surveillance. I really do. But at the same time, I think we've gone way, way further than that, where you can almost start predicting people's movement with the amount of data you're giving them. So for me on this, it was going to be a soft disagree, but I think I'm going to go strong disagree.
Really?
I saw, man, on this documentary, they talk about how in Myanmar they used Facebook to kind of sway things, and it led to a lot of murder. And that for me was like oh fuck, this is... we all know the situation in Myanmar. We know it's in a state of civil war. We know it's not safe, but the fact that people can use this to inflict quite heinous, quite disgusting crimes, I think that's a massive goddamn problem nowadays.
Sure, yeah, and I think, yeah, it's weird. It is a difficult one, isn't it? Because on one level, I was gonna agree. And I was going to say, like, because I'm not actually as worried about sort of this data and stuff as other people are. And I think it's probably because of this whole maxim of, like, if you haven't done anything wrong, then you don't need to be worried. But and I do believe that to a certain extent. And I do believe, on the whole, all of my data that's shared with all these companies, nothing that bad's going to happen to it or happen to me directly because of that. Which I think is true, but I think the part that makes me go to disagree is then if you're only talking about you getting caught out for something, then I would agree, maybe strongly agree with this statement. But
yeah, I would also mimic that as well.
But that's not what we're talking about anymore. Surveillance back in the day, CCTV wasn't used to sell stuff to you. You didn't get caught on CCTV, and then the people saw your clothing and then decided to try and sell you stuff as you walk by. It was pretty much purely to protect you and others, and if a crime's committed. Whereas now online, it is pretty much purely, apart from what the police do online, it's pretty much purely just to sell stuff, and
it's so much more than that. I would argue it's so much more than just selling. It's not. It's also it's also deciding what is put in front of you, what information is put in front of you. It's not like you've just got a blank thing and you can go like, you're on Facebook or YouTube and you've got recommendations. Those are based on your past views. So yeah, I don't know, if you're someone who's very supports party X, it'll keep pushing like stuff that promotes that party's views and shits on like things that party shits on. So it's really. Ooh,
Isn't that just a type of selling though? Like, I know it's aggressive and I know that it can really, if you're not switched on and you're not really aware of it, then it obviously can lead people down the wrong paths. But surely, like, I don't know, for you, for example, it will be happening to you. They'll be using your data. And I don't feel like there's much that can be, however much Facebook or whatever social media you use want to throw at you, it's not really going to convince you, is it, to vote or to vote for someone in particular?
Well, I think the problem is it's making quite close-minded people, because what I believe it's doing anyway is it's taking all your information, taking what you generally look at, taking your views, and it's generally only putting things in front of you that are reinforcing those views, right or wrong as those views are.
Right.
That to me is the massive societal problem, in my eyes anyway.
Sure. I think I get what you're saying. I think that for me is not the bigger worry part of it. I think the reason I do disagree with this statement is because what we do with the data now, I think it's a lot more accessible to people who want to use that data for really malicious stuff. Like,
yeah, I'd agree with that.
It's a worry about democracy, and how Brexit and Trump, and how, well, I guess both sides are now using this platform. Any side of the political spectrum are having to use this tool, because if they don't, then the other side will. But what worries me more is, regimes, like Russia and Chinese Communist Party. I don't feel like it was as easy to access our data through like CCTV and stuff like that. Where, they would have to, I guess it would be extremely difficult. And if they were, they wouldn't know much about me from me walking down the street. Whereas now, if they can get hold of it, then that can be used against us in a much more malicious way. Bank accounts and money and all that sort of stuff can and I guess internet warfare and drones and all this crazy stuff. I don't know how deep it goes, but it is scary, I guess.
I would like to kind of see the full extent of it. I would really urge or advise you to watch The Social Dilemma on Netflix. Really, really kind of a mind-blowing documentary in my eyes.
Cool, yeah, I'll definitely check that out. Yeah, it's the you're the first one who's recommended it personally, but I was listening to a Sam Harris podcast. I think it's his latest one, where he's got someone on who made that documentary, and what they were talking about was really interesting. So yeah, I'll definitely check that out. I'll let you know what I think.
Awesome. Well, I don't know who Sam Harris is, but he sounds like an intelligent man.
Cool. Okay. So you're strongly disagreeing then?
Yeah, I think I would do now. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me just the makes surveillance only wrongdoers need to be worried. Yeah. You know what? I'll strongly disagree as well. I think you've convinced me. Yeah.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah. I think it's I think because I am so ignorant to how deep this stuff goes, I think we should probably be quite worried. I think anything you don't know about that's this powerful, is pretty scary, isn't it?
Yeah, and we are talking about like societal levels of change that these platforms can create via manipulation of people. So,
and especially young people as well, which are really, really impressionable minds, and they're the main base, I guess, for social media. That's the main target, stuff like TikTok and Instagram and their impressionable minds as well.
Yeah, it's really weird because I guess people of around our age group, we went through a brief period. Like I was kind of in my teens before Facebook and social media really became a thing. And to be honest, I've never been that big into social media ever. And to be honest, within the last couple of months, I've pretty much deleted all social media apps off my phone. I I've realized the amount of time sinks that they create, and how much like it's so difficult to put down, so hard, just all the time. It's just a flood of information that you can't, an infinite scroll, and that's a big dangerous part as well. People's time is, I would argue, their most precious resource, and then they're wasting it on cat videos on Facebook.
Yeah. They are great though. But no, yeah, no, and it's the addiction side of it as well. I think that is really worrying. It's that's what I find in
so
myself.
Addictive.
Yeah, like for me,
like even I guess we're both people. I wouldn't class either of us as addicts in any sense of the word, really. But man, when I had like Facebook on my phone, Twitter on my phone, Instagram was the worst one. I just couldn't stop looking at it.
Yeah, and I think, I don't have TikTok, but I think it's sort of a thing where as soon as you open it, there's a video, and then it just plays one video after another. You don't even have to scroll or click or anything. So I think that's another level of just content just flying at you without you even having to do anything.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember as well, like I think there's a lot of historical evidence that shows in modern day whoever controls the media has an ungodly amount of influence into societal things. It used to be the newspapers. It went from I can't remember his name, so I'll skip him, but it's Rupert Murdoch, who that there's a lot of speculation, I think a lot of evidence that he's actually swayed some elections in the past with his media empire. The next step to this whole thing is Facebook and Twitter and people manipulating that data to get what they want. So, and it goes without saying, a social media is far more powerful than a shitty newspaper.
Yeah, exactly. I think with Rupert Murdoch, I don't know the exact amount of years, but it's at least 20 years in this country, every election, and the Brexit referendum went his way, which is crazy. You know, every election has gone his way. And yeah, so it is. And now it's so much more subtle because it's online.
Just a heads up, the first person I was thinking of was really William Randolph Hearst.
I've heard of him. I don't know.
Quite old now. Yeah, he essentially, there's this kind of thing among cannabis users. I don't know how true it is, but a lot of people say that like he's really the main reason cannabis is illegal, and the reason he wanted to make it illegal was because hemp is actually a much better like substance for making paper than trees. It's much more efficient. There are far more benefits, far more uses. Yeah. But all of his money was in paper mills.
Right. Yeah, I've heard this before. Yeah. So, and then because hemp was then made illegal, then that was why weed became illegal.
Yeah, I don't know how true that is, but I've read a lot into William Randolph Hearst swaying other topics in public opinion just from flooding things with bullshit headlines.
Yeah. Oh, it's powerful, isn't it? And nowadays it's, instead of headlines on newspapers, it's just clickbait. And I find interesting as well is people having strong opinions, but they on an article, but they haven't actually read the article. You know, it will just be the headline. Whatever the headline is, whether it's too many immigrants coming into the country, NHS flooded, or whatever it is, you can just read a headline and you don't even have to read the article, and suddenly you've got an opinion, and it's clickbait now, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's really this is much more prominent in England and the United States as well, where our media is actually pretty fucking disgusting. They really sway things quite horrifically and push them to like it's called negative bias, right? Because people care more about things that are bad than things that are good, or at least that's the way I've heard it before. But like just recently, for example, we had the in England, we now have an NHS app for the COVID virus, so it's a bit easier to track where's what. They lost a lot of people's data, I think a lot of positive tests data on that, but because of the way they set the app up, essentially, and all of these headlines were just kind of shitting on it, and they actually used Microsoft Excel, as a way to filter the data, and that was part of the reason all this data was lost. And there were all these articles shitting on them, and all I could think was, these people made a mistake. Making apps isn't easy. I'm sure they'll correct the mistake. I don't understand why you're shitting on them now. In my opinion, the press do not keep... the press aren't this referee where they're trying to find the truth and then they're trying to maintain balance and maintain things being fair. Really, they're just there with a stick poking people going, ooh, look what they're doing. Ooh, look what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. You say that. Have you listened to the podcast episode I did a few ago with a journalist?
Oh, I stopped listening after about 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
I got to the bit where she was like, "Oh man, and there's much more prestige around people like authors of newspapers." I'm like, and I'm done.
Well, I would urge you to listen to more of it, because we get into the second half. It's a lot more of a sort of a debate and back and forth, and I'm sort of challenging newspapers and journalists in this country, and she really defends it really well. And I think honestly, journalists aren't given enough credit in some ways.
I will definitely listen more of that. I really didn't give it a fair pass the first time around, but it's weird for me because the way this actually became very like prominent, like obvious to me was I work with a lot of French people. I work at a French company, Ubisoft, and like a lot of them come to England for the first time, and they are just like bemused by our media. That they're all just like, Nick, your media here is very, very horrible. And like I had an art director once, shout out to Olivier Leonardi, who he actually showed me, okay, Nick, this is the paper, this is the story that your newspapers went with, this is the story a French newspaper went with, and he translated it for English for me. And it was like the French newspaper was a much more neutral statement, where the English newspaper was much more clearly what we'd call clickbait now, I suppose.
Sure, yeah, and I in the discussion I had with Sophie about this, who's the journalist, I did say at one point we've got, I was basically downplaying and basically bringing up the negative aspects of the newspapers and our journalism in this country, and she disagreed, and she gave examples overseas, and I didn't know enough about country. I guess that's a problem. We don't actually know enough about journalism in other countries to be able to compare.
That's very, very true. I'm just going off like generally what I find when I work with foreign people.
Yeah, and to be fair, like I've heard other stuff recently. A friend of mine's girlfriend, who's German, she's been living here for a couple of years or so. And she wants to go back to Germany and live. And one of the reasons is she said I think it was more of a general thing, but she was saying how this country is we're so focused on ourselves. Whereas, and she gave the media as an example, like BBC News or any of the tabloids, we're all so focused on the UK and America that it's actually ridiculous how much stuff we just leave out the news and it's not a headline.
I think it's very, very fair, yeah.
And she says, like, in Germany, like, it's just, so, like, there's lots of stuff happening in Europe, like Belarus, they've had elections recently, which are pretty much certain they were rigged. And it's basically the last dictator in Europe. That's pretty much what it is. And he's backed by Vladimir Putin, and there's been protests going on for ages, and it's just not really got that much coverage here.
I had no idea that was going on.
Right, exactly. And there was a massive fire in I've forgotten the name of the island. It begins with an L. I can't remember, but a Greek island.
Begins with L. No.
I'm saying Lesotho, but that's an African country. I can't remember, but anyway.
I like how you think that saying the letter L will make it come. Just la 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 la
la la la la. It's basically there was a huge fire, and it displaced about. I can't remember the numbers because it hasn't been reported enough, but it's a hell of thousands and thousands and thousands of refugees. It's one of the biggest refugee camps in Europe, and there was a huge fire, and all these refugees now have nowhere to go. So there's just these big things that are happening, and I completely related to what she was saying, because I said it really annoyed me the other day. The BBC, which I consider, I know you may disagree, but to be the best news that we have in this country, it's still not great. But like the example I gave was the other day as a headline, I think it was probably a month or so ago, the top headline in the world, BBC News, this is the top story of the day, Donald Trump wears a mask. And it's it's like, seriously, like, how is that the top story?
Out of everything going on in the world now, but here's also the problem that our media has, and it's no one talks about it, but it's also the same problem the medical industry has. The only incentive they have is money. These aren't charities; they're for-profit organizations, and the way they make the most money is to draw people in and to have them make sure they read their stuff, so that the ad revenue makes more. That is realistically what this all boils down to.
No, exactly, and it's something they can't really get out of, and it's. Unfortunately, if they want to keep their paper or their news outlet going, they have to pay attention to the.
Well,
the ads
I do think whoever's still making newspapers, like, what are you doing? It's 2020. Everyone's got a fucking computer in their pocket, and you're still printing paper every day to give to people. Like, Christ.
I think people still buy newspapers. I think if it really wasn't making any money, I think they wouldn't do it anymore. I think people really...
Yeah, but it's more like... It's not a good thing. Like you keep continuously printing more and more paper. It creates waste. I mean, I always walk out my home. There's just newspapers on the floor. It's just such a redundant technology at this point.
Sure, but I think the papers that sell the most are very, very... very much don't care about the environment that much, so
that's a very valid point.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get anywhere with that particular protest. But yeah, cool, man. I mean, it's been a winding conversation just on one question. But it's been some really interesting points. We started out with surveillance, and we've ended up going into the state of journalism in the UK.
Oh yeah, how the fuck did we get to? How did we get to that?
Well, it was enjoyable. That's the main thing. But yeah, so I reckon now we probably move on to the second question. We're already half an hour in. So the next question is, the death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes. I'm quite on the fence, and I'm quite...
this is a tricky one.
Yeah. I was hoping you might have quite a strong opinion, actually.
No, it's very... This is a tricky question because I'm almost a hypocrite when it comes to this. Like, almost always I would say no, a death penalty can't be the best option. Surely we've got better things than that. But at the same time, and it does say the most serious of crimes, at the same time, like, let's say, I don't have any children, but let's say I have a children, and if someone ever sexually assaulted that child, I would want that person gone. Just deleted from the universe, get rid of them.
Yeah.
So...
And on an economic level as well, this is when I started to change my mind, because when I started becoming more interested in economics and not just we should all be nice to each other, I started to think, like, how much do we pay for prisons, and how much are these people money is going to keeping these people alive? When there's people dying on the streets of homelessness, is there some serious crimes where actually it'd be better for the economy if we just wipe them off the face of the earth?
Yeah, I do think there is an argument against this. I was listening to a podcast with the Innocence Project on it. Okay. And the argument they were saying against the death penalty is like, I totally see why people are for the death penalty. There's some bad people out there. But currently in nations like the United States where they do have the death penalty, being pro-death penalty means you're okay with X amount of innocents being killed every year through this process.
Right, yeah, that is true. And... yeah, I mean, there's lots of arguments against it as well. I mean, that's a really good point. Is you do have to accept that some are going to slip through and that some are going to be innocent. And also, I think another point is around our values and what we're saying. That we have to hold ourselves to a certain standard. And unfortunately, well, I don't know if it's unfortunately, but we have to draw the line somewhere. And I feel like in countries that, like the UK and most European countries and the US, who care about human rights comparatively, compared to some other countries like China or North Korea, we something like the death penalty and not having a death penalty is a statement of how we treat people, which I think is quite a compelling argument as well.
Yeah, honestly, I think with this, I'm erring more and more towards strongly disagree. The reason for that being, I just realized in my head, with the example, if I had a child and someone sexually assaulted that child, I don't think I would want the death penalty. I'd want that person to be left in a cell on their own for the rest of their life, and essentially like psychological torture. Death is a very easy way out.
Yeah, that is true. That's very true.
I sound like a sadistic fuck, but still.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think for me with this, it would definitely be strongly disagree. Especially when it leads to innocents being killed, that's like, we clearly don't know how to use this correctly yet. And
well, just on that example you gave, for the attack against your child, you wouldn't have any say though on how that person was treated. They would be rotting in a cell, but they might not necessarily be alone in the cell. They might end up having good times, and as time goes on, after they've done 30 years or whatever, there might be some leniency and they're allowed certain things a bit more, and so there is that. It wouldn't just be all doom and gloom. It wouldn't be torturing them for the rest of their life type thing.
Yeah. I totally agree. I mean, I'm sure you could appeal to court. Hey, could you just kind of torture these guys in prison for a bit?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I don't know. Like, I think for my side, I love innocence more than I hate guilt.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, and I think in my heart, I feel like this is right. Like to not have a death penalty, and also I think it's proven in America that it has no effect on
crime.
On crime, yeah. And I mean, they've done randomized controlled trials, and they've done it properly. It's not just a case of just randomly looking at stuff. I think it's pretty much been proven without a doubt that in America, at least, it has no impact at all on crime. I think in some ways it's actually the inverse, the opposite. But
you think it promotes it?
Could do, yeah. And I think I don't know that for sure. But I mean, if you have that level of violence and that level of acceptance of violence that you're going to kill someone, it puts another tinge on the people that are supposed to be the moral authority. I guess it's sort of part of the problem with every police officer having a gun in America. There's an aspect to it psychologically. It's like the people, if they're committing the death penalty and they can shoot us any time, and it doesn't make them a moral authority. It just makes them like people who run around killing
deadly
whoever they want. Yeah. Whereas there's sort of a nobleness to going, look, you've done this heinous crime, but we're going to treat you. We're not going to treat you how you would treat someone else type thing. I guess there's a, taking the high ground type thing. And I think there is something to that more than just an idealism of it. I think it does make a difference. I feel more respect for our police officers who don't walk around with guns.
I think our police are actually generally like they're not perfect, and it's with any occupation you'll get a couple dickheads. I'm sure a lot of police officers out there probably don't like a couple of the people they work with, but I do. Like, I don't generally see as much bullshit from our police officers as you do from those in the States. Those in the States just don't seem like they're properly equipped to deal with the situations presented to them.
Yeah, and they've got guns. I mean, it makes a huge difference, surely. Like, if you've just got a gun strapped to your waist, like, fair enough, the SAS and the properly trained people in this country.
But they're not domestic, right? They're not police. That's military. That's a whole different. Yeah, I would agree. All militaries need guns.
Sorry, yeah. I mean, like armed officers. I don't know what they're called, but like when you need to bring in armed officers for whatever reason, domestically. I guess if you in this country, if you had a gun and they were suspected in the house, they would bring in armed officers. But most police in this country don't have a gun, especially when they're just walking around the street. Your local Bobby or whatever, they're not gonna have a gun strapped to it. It does make a difference. Yeah, cool. All right. So you strongly disagree?
Yeah, I would strongly disagree with that. I think your argument of we're not the good guys if we're killing people, I think that said a lot.
Yeah. I think just for this fact that I feel like I'd really like to watch a good debate on it, and I feel like I could be slightly swayed either way. I'll just go with disagree. But I think we're pretty much on the similar page with it.
Yeah, I see. I see the other side of the argument as well, as there are some truly repulsive people out there, and we probably would want them just like plucked out of society. But to me, that just has such damaging ramifications elsewhere on society. I think the gain is much less than the loss.
Yeah, and it's a signal of how far we've come as well. Back in the day when we used to, burn people at the stake and just horrific murders and torture. It shows how much progress we've made and how we treat other human beings. Cool. All right. We'll move on to the next one. So question number 44 is: in a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and people below to be commanded. In a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and people below to be commanded.
Okay, so I would strongly disagree with this. I think I don't see why you have to have people above you who you just blindly obey. And I really I personally don't. I've never had subordinates beneath me in the company I work for currently, but I don't when I'm helping junior staff and whatnot. I don't get any gratification from just commanding to them. I get gratification from teaching to them and more convincing them that things are the right way to go, rather than me just going, "Hey, just do this." Because I think a lot is lost when you're just kind of dictated to by someone above you. You don't really get the meaning of what you're trying to do.
So you don't like bondage then?
I don't like bondage. I mean, I've been duct taped to the ceiling a couple of times. So yeah, I think this is one really is a strongly disagree for me. I don't think to be civilized you need someone who you obey and someone who obeys you.
See, I think we might disagree with each other a bit here, but I think, as some of these discussions are, I think it's down to semantics, because I was gonna strongly agree, and then what put me a bit more in the grey area was the words obeyed and commanded.
Yeah, definitely. Those two words make it really fucking weird.
Yeah, and then it becomes a lot more like an army situation where you have to do whatever your superior says. Well, I guess in that sense, do you agree with that? That you have to be in a combat situation. You need to be able to just take the orders and then go. Or
so I've never been in the military, but yeah, I can totally see a need for this in the military.
So I guess
the military and a civilized society are not the same thing.
Well, surely that's part of a civilized society, is it?
Well, no, because that's like a set of rules to one part of society, the military. People that are well trained, active, going out helping others. Like I'm sure they do more than just help others, but I see that. I see it. I totally see the use for it in the military, but the military is not society.
No. I guess it depends on how you see the question, because you said, it's a part of society. So there is a need for it somewhere in society.
But it's also a tiny part. Like, I don't know how many number of people are in our military compared to the population, but it's got to be pretty damn small.
Yeah, it's got to be minute. It's probably less than 1%, isn't it?
I would assume so.
Yeah. See, I feel like so the part of me that was going to go strongly agree and potentially will still go with agree is I feel like on the whole we do need hierarchies. We do need we do need people who are above others and give them maybe not orders, but give them instructions, and then people need to carry it out. Now, obviously, we live in a society, and absolutely, I agree, it shouldn't be like the army everywhere, but it's a lot more gentler. It's a lot more, but like Emma, for example, she works in a charity, but you can't just go. You need to have people. So they're extremely nice to each other in the charity. They're the way they do lay down the orders or ask people to do stuff is very diplomatic, but it's still that structure is there underneath. Like if Emma or anyone who was taking these orders or taking these instructions was like, oh, well, I don't have to do this, or, well, then that's when someone would play their, well, I'm your boss type card. And that, I think it needs to be there. And I think,
I'd like to offer a different perspective on this.
Okay.
So I do see that a lot of companies use hierarchies for a variety of reasons. I don't know. I'm not anti-hierarchy, but I do think they can lead to quite a bit of unpleasantness and a lot of value at the same time. But like to put my working situation, like my job title is associate producer. I report to someone, my boss, but I don't have anyone kind of beneath me in the hierarchy. But I do work with developers and a lot of teams. I don't tell anyone and I'm not above anyone in the hierarchy in any sense either. But I still have to. I still have to coordinate work and make sure it gets done. I never dictate or tell anyone to do anything. I more pose it as a question and say, hey, we've got this. Are you cool to handle that?
And if they say no?
If they say no, I would say, well, how come?
Sure, and they say, well, I don't really feel like it today. Do you know what I mean? Hold
on. Their argument back would just be like, I don't want to do any work today.
No, well, they don't want to do that job today. They don't want to do that particular task. Can you ask someone else to do it? Or can you do it? Why don't you do it?
I mean, so I don't think anyone would ever ask me to do work that I'm asking developers to do. Like, I'm not a programmer. It's been a long time since I was actually in Engine. But I think if someone's saying, if someone made the argument of, hey, I don't want to do this work today, I would say, well, do you reckon you could do it tomorrow or another day? Maybe it doesn't have to be right now.
And they were like, nah, I'd rather not do that task at all, to be honest.
Oh, and then if they didn't, I will always ask why. If no, I super don't want to do that task, I say, well, how come? What's up with this task?
And then they say, well, basically, however far you go into it, they come up with a reason, and that's their reason.
I mean, I would.
My point I'm trying to make is, underneath all this, you do have to. I mean, you said you have no one under you at all, but underneath all the niceties and stuff, and all the stuff that we do generally in our everyday life, we're never going to come across really, or very rarely will come across someone who challenges an authority figure or challenges that's that very subtle hierarchy that exists, because we live in a society that's very polite, and we need to get along with each other. But underneath it all, actually, if it was challenged, that's when it would have to start to come into play. And the way I sort of changed on this is because I did a fair bit of youth work, and in New Zealand, it was very, very intense youth work. It was being in a residential home where the young people, that was their home, and I came in with a quite idealistic attitude in lots of ways, and part of it was thinking, well, I don't want to tell young people what to do, but the reality sort of sets in is that actually, no, you need to be an adult, you need to set boundaries, they need to know that you're there as the boss. And even though that's not how you conduct yourself like an army person, it needs to be underlined, because when push comes to shove, when an extreme situation happens, or if you get a young person or someone under you, so relate this to work as well, you get someone who is, new, or someone who just, works in a job that is more doing what you ask them to do, if they are if the situation's getting the niceties and the stuff and the way that you're saying stuff doesn't work, then unfortunately then there needs to be some sort of thing of like, well, this is what I'm asking you to do, and because I would argue that you saying, do you mind doing this, is actually just a nice way of saying do this.
I think you can make that argument, yeah, but the fact of the matter is, it is a question, not an instruction.
Sure, but that's a way of doing it. There's always a nice way.
Well, no, one is a statement, one is a question. These are two. Like, I'm giving the other person an opportunity to respond. I'm not just walking up, slamming some work into their desk, going, "Do this, motherfucker," and leaving.
Well, if you've got, let's just say, for example, you've got someone who does work for you. They are sort of, you generally are sort of, let's just say, for argument's sake, you are asking them questions for them to do. If there's someone sitting around on their phone all day and they literally don't want to do anything, what do you do? If you're the one in that situation to do something about that, what do you do? And they don't really want to do anything.
Okay, so I would say to them, hey, so we're paying you to do work, but you just kind of sat on your phone all the time. What's the deal with that?
Or they'd give a load of excuses. They say, "Oh no, I don't feel like working today. My girlfriend's posted these really funny videos," and they try to show you the videos. And
in that case, I would probably talk to their manager or maybe even HR and say, "Look, it seems like we've got a problem with this person. They're not doing any work, but we're paying them."
Why would you talk to the manager? Surely because they are in a position of authority, and you wouldn't want to have someone in that job who does that, and therefore you need an authority to then, hire and fire, and to say you need to do this or you're gone, or that's what I mean. Is this is when it's an underlying thing of hierarchy. We pretend there's no hierarchy, but actually, if a situation like that happened, you would have to go to an authority and say, well, we need to do something about this.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're getting at. I guess the issue for me is those situations don't like they are extreme situations, and I've never had that happen before. And every time a developer's like kind of kicked back to me and said, "No, I don't want to do that," I ask, well, how come? And generally, they'll have like a good rationale of, well, the tooling sucks. It's going to be such a ball ache to do. And then I'm like, okay, so the tools are broken. I can go fix the tools. But I wouldn't have gotten that information if I just said, hey, do this.
Sure, I guess, and maybe another way.
I see where you're coming from. I totally see where you're coming from.
It's like the army, right? So we had the army there, and see the army as this hierarchy in the company. It's this sort of underlying thing that we don't ever talk about, we don't need in our everyday life. But if another country attacks us, it's there, and it's a structure, and we're strong enough to do it. And I feel the same with this. Like, we don't act like, oh, I'm the big boss. Well, I mean, some companies fucking do, but like, we don't go around, normal people don't go around going, well, I'm above you, do this, do that. But underneath it, with my industry, for example, that is a perfect example of something that on the surface seems like, it's creative industry, everyone's just chipping in equally, but if you're on a set and stuff, time is usually like, doesn't matter how big or small the set is, like, even if it's just me and someone else just filming a very small thing for YouTube for a company, or it's like huge sets where I've been on where it's like multi-million-pound huge productions. Time is an extremely precious resource, and you can't have these sort of discussions, especially on set. You can't have, if someone isn't pulling their weight, or if someone is like that situation I was talking about, we can't have too many of those sort of discussions. And there needs to be a sense of who you're working for, who your direct boss is, and even like when I go to certain sets, even if it's just, again, me and another person filming for the day, in certain situations we'll establish beforehand who's sort of leading the shoot, because if the client is asking us a question like, oh, are we going to film this as a moving shot, or are we just going to do it static, then we can't just be having a back and forth all day. We need to have someone who goes, well, this is the final decision, this is what we'll do. So I guess for me, I see the importance of hierarchy, and I think it's one of those things that's doesn't look nice, but actually is vital.
is quite effective. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and when push comes to shove, you do need to get shit done, but I really don't think you need a hierarchy to do that, because I do have certain times, like in game development, we do have times where things are very time sensitive. It's very, man, game development gets really fucking chaotic and messy sometimes. Like whatever you work on, it's gonna hit that point. And I don't have like people below me in the hierarchy. They don't have to listen to me, but even when the times do get dire and I'm just like, hey, we've got this bug that's breaking the whole game at the moment. Can you just fix this now for me? I think a better replacement for a hierarchy is trust and respect.
Yeah, I just don't think it's a replacement. I just think that's all the stuff that happens 95% of the time, but the hierarchy is underneath it all, holding it up.
And the problem is as well, the way this is worded is obeyed and commanded, which means there's not really any say or conversation. It's just dictatorial. And I know that's what, I don't know if they still do it in Russia, but I know the days of the Soviet Union, that was very much the case when everything was state operated.
Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say now that it led to a whole host of problems.
Yeah, of course.
Chernobyl being the biggest fucking one.
Okay, well, all right.
That's interesting. It's weird because I think we kind of agree upon the arguments for and against, but we're still on very different sides. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think if it was a few years ago, I'd probably be on the same side as you. But I think I've started to see more and more. I've started to notice more and more that actually certain times the authority needs to be pulled up, like the authority card or however you want to put it. It does need to be there to be pulled sometimes. Unfortunately, but yeah. I get where you're coming from as well.
Another argument I would make on this point is I do believe that when there's someone above you who you just kind of have to blindly follow and someone below you who you just kind of command. When you get into circumstances like this, especially when you're just doing work for someone else and it's what they say you do, like you jump how high, that kind of thing, I do think that's got negative impact as well. I do think it takes away, like, if you're not freely thinking, you're not going to be coming up with your best ideas, you're not going to be your best problem solving self, you're probably not going to be your best working self either. So I think a hierarchy gives a lot of benefits, but it also comes at a cost as well, which is a little bit more abstract, I would argue.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's why my answer for this is agree and not strongly agree, because of the wording of obey and command.
I think you've the problem is, I really want to go soft disagree, but the obey and command is like, I'm strongly disagree on that.
Fair enough. Cool. All right. So next question is, very different sort of question. Abstract art that doesn't represent anything shouldn't be considered art at all. So this is a very different question.
The problem is it's using abstract art as this whole term, but really abstract things in art is like a gradient. You can get things that are totally abstract, things that aren't abstract at all, and then a billion things in between.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. It doesn't represent anything. I mean, yeah.
But how do you know that it doesn't represent anything? I mean, don't get me wrong, I've seen some pretty atrocious pieces of art that like, it represents inequality in the earth. It's like, well, you didn't make that pretty fucking clear at all. So, I just. Go on.
I guess maybe a scenario that we can agree on, and then we might have something more solid to go on, is if, let's say there was an artist exhibition and they revealed their, let's just say it was a screwed up piece of paper on top of a toilet seat, and the artist was asked, what does it represent? And he said, nothing, I just did it. So should that be considered art at all? So then we know it doesn't represent anything.
I would argue if he's just taken a toilet seat, put it somewhere, then no, that's very well. I would argue it's incredibly lazy art.
Yeah, I think art is one of it's like This is a question where
I can't define art.
This is like whenever you talk about art, there's four options to choose from. I feel like they all just merge into each other and become a swirling mess of nothing. Like it's how do you define art? And it's almost in itself, it's like undefinable because it wouldn't want to be defined. It's such a weird thing. Like, because my instinct goes, well, how do we categorize art? But you can't. How can you? Because there's some people would go, everything's art. Like even the person standing there saying it doesn't represent anything. Maybe that's art. Maybe him saying that is the art. And then we're supposed to think about, should stuff? You know what I mean? Like, and
yeah.
I think this. I guess my answer will just be based on the fact that I really, really don't enjoy modern art. Like, I really don't. And I actually no. I enjoy it because I laugh the whole time I'm going around a modern art museum, which is enjoyable, and I take the piss out of it. But I do not take it seriously. I think it just doesn't do it for me at all.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of modern art by any means either. God, I remember going through I think it was the Tate Modern in London once, and I'd gone into this room, and 4 of the walls in the room were painted white, and 1 was painted brown, and that was the whole exhibit. And I was just like, "Are you fucking shitting me?" Like, I was just like, I could have done this. I could have done this at home.
Well, that's
it.
it.
You didn't think about this. You probably didn't have anything yesterday. You went, "Oh fuck, quickly, we need to make an exhibit," and then you painted the wall brown.
Yeah.
So I'm no fan of modern art. I think because abstract, like as a term, is a gradient, not an absolute.
Yeah.
I think I would go with a soft disagree.
So, what was the question? Abstract art doesn't matter. Do you know what? Just because I've got a bee in my bonnet about modern art, art that is too much airy-fairy, I'm going to go with strongly agree.
I think the reason I go with soft disagree is because I really don't like if you're saying anything that's even slightly abstract shouldn't be considered art at all. It could be a slippery slope, and where you just start dismissing everything, like art wise.
In a modern art museum, I pretty much do anyway.
I'm not gonna lie, Dan. I do, because I work with a lot of artists. I go to a lot of museums, and I've seen a lot of shit.
Has anyone ever shown you a bit they really like, and you have to like stand there and pretend, or have to say that you hate it?
I've never been in a position where I had to lie about my thoughts about something. I've definitely been with a lot of artists where they were showing me their favorite pieces, and they really wanted me to like them, and I was just like, "Are you fucking shitting me? This? Like, we pay you to do art, and you like this?"
I think you might have to report them to HR to get fired.
I've actually jokingly gone to a couple of people's bosses. Like there was this one programmer who said that he didn't like the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, and I went to his boss just like in a really serious, like, "Hey man, I need to have a fucking word with you."
That's quality.
So you're a strong agree. I'm a soft disagree on that one.
Yeah, just because I can't actually formulate an opinion. I just have to take a strong stance, because I just find this whole modern art, abstract art, that I just think the pretentiousness of it, and how much money people spend on, that probably cost, for some reason, it probably cost like tens of thousands of pounds, that bloody brown wall in the white room. The cost of hiring the room and the paint, and how much thinking time the artist had to do. I just think, bloody hell.
Well, the thinking time was 0, so you can ignore that.
Well, no, because the artist will charge for that thinking time. That's what his art is about. But yeah, so I have a bit of a bee on my bonnet, to be fair.
I can totally appreciate. I think, man, if you'd have spoke to me like a couple of years ago, I'd have been totally on your side here.
You spent too much time in modern art museums, I think.
I have spent too much time in modern art museums. There's a lot of truth to that.
Cool. All right. Well, let's move on to the next question. In criminal justice, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation?
So this would be a soft disagree for me. I'm not one of these very left-wing hippy-dippy people where I'm just like, no, everything should be about love. I do see a need to punish those who have done bad things, to kind of make it clear, like, yo, this was bad, you fucking dunce, you shouldn't have done this. Like if you're a thief or whatever, or just crimes we can all agree are objectively bad. But at the same time, I do think it's better. If people like for like little crimes like thievery and things like that, I do think it would be better if someone went into prison and came out a better person.
I agree with you. I do agree with you. And I think going to prison itself, because rehabilitation, you even the ones that I think there's some in Norway that are pretty much pure rehabilitation, you still lose your freedom in terms of you're not allowed to. It's still a prison of sorts. So there is a punishment aspect to it. And even prisons, the most highly guarded, well, in high income countries, the most highly guarded and strict prisons have some aspect of rehabilitation. So I agree with you. I think these people are getting locked up either way, but if they can come out better people and then give something back to society, either when they leave prison or while they're still in prison, by being good people, and then surely that's better than just destroying them and I don't know. Yeah.
Then it's because there's actually the positive value that can come out of rehabilitation, whereas I would argue there isn't really any benefit to punishment. I think, like, going back to the if I had a kid and someone assaulted them or whatever, going back to that example, I think realistically, seeing that person dead or hurt or whatever, I don't think that would make me happier I think it does right now, but I think actually if I was in the moment and that had happened, I don't think I would be happy.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's just pain upon pain, then, isn't it? It's
and it's like you haven't done any good to the world. In fact, you've made it worse because now there's more horribleness.
Yeah. Which obviously in that sort of situation, you can't see the wood through the trees. You're just so distraught that something happened.
Oh God, I can't imagine what that would be like.
Yeah. But actually, as an outsider or as someone who's never been through something that horrendous, you can say, well, with a clear head, and you hear these amazing stories. I think they're truly inspiring stories of people who actually go and see the killers or one of their family members, and they go in and they talk to them and they forgive them, and they.
Oh wow!
They try to show, and it's beautiful. It's a really beautiful thing, and it's beyond. I think that shows some of the best of what we're capable of as humans. That you can, if someone kills your wife or your child, and you're able to. I would really recommend anyone to watch a documentary called Human. It's free on YouTube. There's 3 volumes of it, and each are like an hour and a half each, so you don't have to watch the whole thing. It's a long slog, but the opening thing, maybe just watch the first 10-15 minutes, and the first story, it's basically a load of people, different people, one at a time, who are sort of talking to camera, and they cut it together really well, just straight to camera with just a black background, and it's just basically about, it just sort of slowly transitions between these themes of like death and love and sex and gender and all these different things that we encounter in life. But the opening thing is literally what I just talked about, is this sort of high level of forgiveness, and it's really powerful.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from, man. I think that one of the reasons humans have excelled to be one of the most dominant life forms on the planet is because of our creation of tools. But I think the most valuable tool we ever created, and I don't know if it was created or if it's something we've just got in us, but that tool is empathy, and I think that can do far more than all the other tools put together.
Yeah, sure. Exactly.
The second most powerful tool is nuclear weapons.
Love versus nuclear weapons. Who would win?
Depend if you can have a heart to heart with the person before they pull that trigger.
There's an amazing I don't remember the name of the guy, but there's a book by Steven Pinker. I don't know if it's A Better Angels of Our Nature or Enlightenment Now. They're both about the sort of the progress we've made as humanity over time. But he talks about, there's a section in one of them that talks about unsung heroes, like the true heroes, like not the people that we see as heroes, but like the people that we never hear about. And one of them they mention is there was a time during the Cold War, so when Russia and America were really on the verge of destroying each other.
Was this in the submarine?
It might have been in a submarine, but basically,
is this the Russian nuclear launch that almost happened?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it was on a submarine, yeah.
Right, yeah. So I think what it was a glitch in the system, but the glitch made it look like to the Russians, and the only, I think it was a guy by himself at the time on watch of everything, that made it look like there was the Americans had launched a nuclear missile.
I think their comms had gone out, and the only thing that would cause all of your comms to go out, a nuclear armament, it also releases an EMP, which knocks out all electronics. So I think the head of this submarine had been like, oh fuck, nuclear wars just happened, we need to load this shit up.
Yeah, so obviously when you're sort of neck and neck with about to launch nuclear weapons, if someone's launched one, then you need to launch one back because you need to show your strength and your power or whatever. But this captain, I guess, or the person leading it, decided not to. He decided not to launch any nuclear weapons, even though it seemed pretty much certain that the Americans had attacked them. And if he had launched those nuclear weapons, then, in all likeliness, none of us would be here today, because then it would have just been all-out nuclear war and the planet would be a dust bowl.
I think it was someone that managed to calm down and convince the leader of the naval vessel. They're like, well, we don't know what's happened. We can't just start randomly shooting nuclear warheads at people.
Right, yeah. So
I got this off like an Oliver Stone documentary a long time ago, so I could be incorrect.
Cool. But yeah, anyway, the people like this who, are just, they're these sort of unsung heroes, I guess. I can't remember how that ties in what we were saying, but
we're talking about punishment and rehabilitation. How did we get into the Cold War and an almost nuclear launch?
I don't know. But back to the question. I think I will punishment. Yeah, I'll disagree.
Yeah, I think I'm a soft disagree as well. Don't get me wrong, I do see the other side of the argument that you do get these awful people who, by all means, should be punished. I just see so much more value in rehabilitation than I do punishment.
Yeah. And personally, I do think there should be an aspect of punishment if someone does something bad, but it shouldn't be instead of the rehabilitation. There should be then a rehabilitation aspect to it that is more for the tail end of their time or whatever.
I guess the punishment side of it is you're put in prison. Your freedom, your time is taken away from you, and someone else gets to choose what that's done with now.
Yeah, and I think you still need that aspect of it.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, okay. Cool. So we're both on the same page with that one. So next question. It is a waste of time to try and rehabilitate some criminals. That's a very similar question to the last one, I guess.
Yeah, the weird thing is about this one, I'm going to go the other way, where it's a soft agree.
Yeah.
I know I keep going on about documentaries on Netflix, but there's a documentary on Netflix, and it's called American Murderer: The Family Next Door. And I've watched a lot of documentaries like this, but this one really fucking shocked me to my core, where at the end of the documentary I was just silent, and I was not shaking, but I was just like, oh my god, I can't believe that happened, and the events that led to it are what caused it. It was truly disgusting. I think there are several cases in the past, like it was serial killers, pedophiles, where it's like, yeah, just fuck these assholes. You're not going to get anything good out of this piece of shit.
Yeah, and you know what? I actually strongly agree with this, because it says some criminals, and it is true. It is a waste of time to try and rehabilitate.
Yeah.
some criminals. I mean, I guess you have to try to start off with. You can't just look at someone and they're what they did and say they're impossible. But surely it would get to a certain point where you realise. I mean, psychopaths are the perfect example. Like people who biologically cannot empathise with others. Like, how do you even approach that if they don't care and they can't actually see from another person's point of view, like why that would be horrendous? You can't. They're almost not human. How do you even get through to someone like that?
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever met anyone like that. I can't imagine what not having empathy is like, and I think that's such a dangerous thing.
They did a study a while ago. I don't know what study it was, but they did a psychopath test on high-level business people, the most corporate of the corporate, and prisoners, and there was a higher percentage of psychopaths in the business world than there was in prison.
But that's not surprising. at least with prison, there is an argument over like punishment, rehabilitation. In the corporate world, it's just money. It's not, hey, how much good are we doing? Are we making the world a better place? It's just, yo, how much money we make? How much money did I make? Yo, where's my bonus, man? Why don't you sell enough of whatever product we sell?
And I guess there's an aspect in the business world of the more psychopathic you are, the more you'll get rewarded. The more that you step on people and push forward and just focus on the money.
I mean, yeah, look at Jeffrey Epstein. That's exactly everything that guy's was, and he was a fucking scumbag.
Yeah. And then there's that, what's his name? Jordan Belfort from Wolf of Wall Street. I don't know if he is actually a technical psychopath, but that's just a perfect example of someone who just exploit and doesn't really care that much about
lied to people, essentially fucked their money over. Yeah. He definitely wasn't doing the best interest in humanity there.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, I think we're both on the same page with that. There's some messed up people out there. Cool. All right, so next question is, the business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist.
I could not fucking disagree with this. This is a strongly disagree to the absolute nth degree for so many motherfucking reasons. like essentially what this statement is our media at the moment. That's what it is. It's not about a writer who's like, hey, I'm gonna call these people out on some horrible things they're doing. It's not an artist who's created an incredible piece of work that has a lasting impact on people. It's just like the business person, the manufacturer. That's just figuring out a machine that churns shit out.
Yeah. So do you strongly disagree because you think the writer and the artist are more valuable, more important, or you just think they're not less important?
I think they're more important because the writer is creating a message, really, generally a message or a story. And I think there's a lot, man, if you look at human society and history, stories have a massive impact on society, absolutely huge. I think there's a lot of I can't remember, Joseph Campbell, who was an author. I think he's sadly passed away now, but he did a lot of work where he kind of collated all these stories from all these different civilizations that knew each other. Well, they didn't know each other, that was the thing, but they all had these exact same stories with a couple of things changed. So I think there's something in stories that's where we get our kind of moral and ethical values from.
He's the one who's all about the hero's journey, isn't he? Like 12 steps.
Yeah, he wrote that book, and it's and anyone who's looking into getting into writing or anything else, I would really advise his work because it's quite interesting how he analyzes stories across history, across like a long history as well, and just kind of points out all these consistencies across societies that never would have seen each other. I think the difference here is intent. The writer and the artist will have an intent in their work, and that can be good and that can be bad. But generally speaking, I think most people, regardless of what industry they're in, are good people. I think it's pretty rare you find like an objectively evil person. I think they're very rare people. A business person and a manufacturer are looking for money. I don't like. I work in a big business, and I don't get the impression that the company gives a fuck about anything except for making money and brands and advertising.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. That's a bit disingenuous, because I think if you're going to say that the writer and the artist have good intentions, I think it's only fair to then say the business person and the manufacturer have good intentions. Because
Right, but they're good intentions that make money. Because they're reporting to someone above them in a hierarchy who is only focused on money. That's the reality of manufacturing.
Sure, but then, if you have writers and artists who are not getting paid for it, I'm sure that they're going to have an issue with that, and it's not sustainable. There is always an aspect of money. If people want to do it for a job, then yeah, I mean, I guess you can be a writer and an artist and not do it as a job, whereas you can't really be a business person and not do it as a job.
I mean, you can. You're just really shit at your job.
Yeah. I had the same answer in terms of strongly disagree with this statement, but for different reasons. I actually disagree with you. I think the business person and manufacturer are just as important, because you're talking about history and how much impact they make, and I completely agree. Whether you have Shakespeare writing fiction, or you have Martin Luther King writing speeches, or after the First World War, apparently a big part of the reason that people started to change their mind, because before that, a lot of people, it was very glorified war. It was very much like war is a noble type thing, but then after that, there was a lot of writing about the First World War, and just from the down and dirty side of the soldiers, and that changed a lot of people's perspective on war. So I completely agree, but we can't, like, businessmen and business people, it should say, and manufacturers, like the invention of like penicillin and birth control pill, and in terms of business, the Industrial Revolution, like these had huge impacts on us, and agriculture, and business people who are entrepreneurs, that they can create. And then now, thinking of like the environmental movement, like business people and manufacturers who are coming up with eco-friendly options. So now when I look online, if I'm looking for something, I can get a bamboo version of it instead of plastic, or I can get one that clothes that were sustainably sourced, and I think so. And these sort of companies are a perfect example of, like, yeah, they're trying to get money, like the business person is, but they want to do something good as well.
Okay, so your argument is, it's a stereotype that business people in manufacturing are just cold hard money, but actually in reality there are several examples where these people do good things that are good for us, good for the environment.
Definitely, and I think if you look back at history, the big things like, I mean, birth control pill is a perfect example of like how much power that has given women, like, and how much difference that makes, and in terms of everything. So it's so, these are things that we take for granted, and antibiotics and all these things were manufactured, and then they were made affordable because people jumped on it and wanted to make their own versions, and then it became competitive and the prices went down. And I think on the flip side, there are many artists and writers, not on the whole obviously, but there are some who writers, for example, I can think of like just films just as an example, but there's many writers out there who write films that are just the same old drivel over and over again, and it's crap. I mean, it's crap writing.
You get bad writer and artist, that's for sure.
Yeah, and some writers and artists genuinely do it because they know they'll get money from it. If anybody was asked to write a Marvel film and know the paycheck they'd get with that, that would be their motivation. So that's why
That's interesting. Yeah, I this would still be a strongly disagree for me. I think more because without the writer and the artist, I don't know how many ideas you're going to get that the business people can manufacture.
Yeah, but I'm the same answer as you, but because I don't think the business person and the manufacturer are more important, I'm saying I strongly disagree, because that you can't really measure who's more important.
Yeah, I would definitely disagree that these are two totally separate, totally different kind of families of occupation, just totally removed from each other. Yeah, they're definitely not more important. I do see. Yeah, I do see a need for, you have a cool product, you need to mass produce it, you need to sell it, you need to market it, you need to play that game and get it out there. Especially because I do believe that most business people do want to make products that, make people's lives better. I think the majority of people here are good. But to say they're more important, no. No.
Yeah. So I think we're both on the same. I mean, and another thing to think of is, where would films be without someone manufacturing a camera? Where would games be without someone manufacturing the console? Where would writing be without people manufacturing what a pen is? They all sort of tie in with each other, I think, and they're all necessary.
Yeah, I mean, the writer can make the most impressive, thought-enhancing book, but if they can't manufacture it and get it out there to the masses, how valuable is it?
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Sweet. Well, my phone is actually quite low on battery now, but
Shall we call it there, or?
Yeah, I mean, we've done like nearly an hour and a half, so I think that's a pretty good place to leave it. I'll just put a line here so we remember for next time. So that was number 48, I believe. Yeah. So the next question.
We could probably knock through the next one really quickly.
Yes, yeah. What's the next one? Mother's May. Okay. Well, that might be an interesting one. I think that we'll leave that for next time.
That sounds good to me.
That's a very feminism question, isn't it?
No, I don't think it's a feminist. Well, if feminism is equal rights, women have equal rights to men, then yeah, it's definitely a feminist thing.
Sure. Cool. Well, wow. I mean, I think because of our tangents, we only did like a few questions there.
That was a fun conversation. You made me think a lot about some things.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the main thing, really. That's what I love about this, is these conversations we've been having, is we genuinely are challenging each other a little bit, and we're going off on these tangents, but it doesn't matter because we're loving it. And hopefully there's at least one person out there who loves these conversations, or is at least enjoying it. And I'm determined to find them.
And thank you so much to that person.
Yes, yeah. But most of all, thank you, Nick. I think even if there's no people listen to it, I genuinely just enjoy these conversations.
I always enjoy talking, man. You're a clever fella.
And let's leave it there. I'm a clever fella. Take it easy, man.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.